Welcome to another episode of the Organic Mindset Podcast. As always, we got some new knowledge, new juice for y'all to tune into. So without further ado, man, I'm going to let my guest introduce herself. So, man, go ahead and tell them a little bit about yourself. Tell them who you are, what you do.
For sure. First of all, Brother Williams, I appreciate you so much for having me on the podcast. Without further ado, my name is Myles and Justin. I am a senior at Northwestern State University. I have a major in accounting, a minor in business administration, and a minor in computer information systems. I'm also a member of the greatest fraternity on this side of heaven, which is Calper X, which Justin Williams, he brought me into the bond. So words can't explain like how much I look up to him as a person and a brother. I'm also the president of Beta Alpha Psi, which is an accounting organization on NSU's campus. Also a member of Student Activity Organization Board, which is short for, well, the abbreviation is SAOB. And basically with that organization, we are considered leaders in the business department as well. And I am also a member of African American History Club. So it's a little bit about me.
Man, I feel like you gave them people a, gave them people a mouthful, gave them something to look up to for sure.
I appreciate that, man.
Oh yeah, most definitely. So that's gonna take me into my first question. So pretty much with everything you said, you're involved in and things of that nature. What is like, if you had to give, advice as far as like being involved in college, what are, like what has geared you to be, so involved? And also kind of like, what are the, what are some like the benefits that you've seen from, being involved on campus?
Yeah. So that's really a good question. And just to piggyback off that, being involved is one of the most important things that somebody can do, especially in college. I'm actually from Natchitoches, and my school, Northwestern State University, is in Natchitoches. So I kind of knew a majority of the individuals that are in Natchitoches, but surprisingly enough, the people on Northwestern's campus, most of them are not from Natchitoches. So it's basically like Northwestern is its own little town within Natchitoches, if that makes sense. So I felt like I was starting from ground zero. So from pre-K all the way up to 12th grade, I knew basically everybody in Natchitoches because it's not a huge town. But when I got to Northwestern, I was like, oh, snap. Like, I really have to, get out there and get my name out there again after 12 years of schooling, 14 counting pre-K and so forth. But after all those years of schooling, I had to just really start from ground zero. And one of my main motivations for wanting to get active on campus is to get my face known to Kappa Alpha Psi. I figured that if I was able to join different organizations, that sooner enough, some of those members would possibly look at me like, okay, he's actually doing something and he can be a benefit to this organization. And that leads me to another thing. One of the things that you always want to do as an individual is you don't ever want to go into a relationship just basically pulling from somebody or something. Yeah. So you always want to have something that you can actually bring to them in order to have a perfect relationship. And that's actually one of my mentors. His name is Neo Davis. You can actually follow him on Instagram, but he has Instagram lives often. But one of those things that just really just stood out to me, he's a part of an organization called Circle of CEOs. And basically this particular circle, one person actually invests in stocks. Another person does Forex. Another person within the Circle of CEOs does strictly trucking. And another person, his name is Mr. Him 500. He deals with just building people's credit. And he also helps you with being able to learn how to get business funding. I think it's like $250,000 of startup funding for your business. So those are just a few people you want to, just look into. And again, like I said, not to veer off on what I was saying, but just bringing something to the table always separates you from the next person. So to answer your question, so once I joined a multitude of different organizations, some of the guys that were in the organization Cap outside, they kind of noticed it, and I was able to, not say I had a cakewalk in, but I was able to be familiar with some of the individuals outside of the organization itself. So when I went to the interest meeting, I kind of knew some of their faces, and they kind of had seen my face a few times. And that was really the whole motivation for me getting active on campus. If anybody knows me, I'm extremely quiet at times, but I've actually grown out of that a lot. But but that's really how I got motivated to get active on campus.
Okay. Yeah, that's real interesting, and just to kind of like touch on, some of the, pretty much, him 500. So that was, someone that I followed on Instagram as well. And then kind of, like I say, just kind of looking at the people that were, in his inner circle. So, as far as like Mr. 2 Weeks Out and stuff like that, that was also, another person I went and followed. And, Alex Good Energy, I'm not sure what his real name is, but that's kind of like I say, how I, categorize him. But I feel like, everybody in his inner circle kind of has something like to offer, and it's all like kind of like you said, they vary in, different fields and so, and, things of that nature. And, I feel like personally, like I said, that's very beneficial just as far as like, kind of like being someone that's up and coming and kind of like doing your research.
Yeah.
So, with Tony the Closer, that was also somebody else, kind of like I had like looked into, and it was kind of, I guess, like in a negative manner in a sense, like I had followed him, but it was after the fact, like a lot of kind of beef that came up between, like him and him 500, but it was kind of like, them off like knowing each other personally and stuff like that, and just kind of like past dealings and stuff they had. But I mean, I feel like, at the end of the day, business is business, they kind of squashed it, but
Yeah, I actually remember that.
Yeah.
And it was really like a big thing because you're taking two influencers and they just, they got into it. But just to piggyback off what you actually just said, there's a famous quote that I teach to all of my members, both Beta Alpha Psi and Kappa Alpha Psi. Most likely every meeting I start off with this. And it's a simple quote that simply says that if you surround yourselves around 4 millionaires, you're going to be the 5th millionaire. And that's just simply because you're putting yourself around like-minded individuals that actually want to see you win. And you don't surround yourself around people that, they kind of hating on you in a sense. And when they see that you gaining a little success, they kind of, they get insecure about their own dealings and their own success, that they would rather not see you win, but rather they'll see you lose, rather than, if you have four well individuals, they all want to see you win, because it's like, okay, we all got it, but now I need to make you rich now. And that's what Jay-Z actually said in one of his songs. He was basically saying how they determine success by who else they've made successful. So that's kind of one of those things that I've taken after listening to multiple podcasts, and like in particular the Organic Mindset podcast. This is something big that you're doing that you really don't even know, that maybe even 2-3 years down the line, and I'm just saying 2-3 years, but it can actually happen today.
Yeah.
That you just never know who's listening and who's watching. So, that's one of those things you have to always, be ahead of the game. And like I said, bring something to the table. So just like you practicing on this craft, there's some day that you're going to meet somebody that you can actually help with this, and you can bring a business proposition, and you just never know where it's going to lead you to. But it takes for somebody to actually hone in on the skill and become the absolute best that you can actually be. And then that's when you see the success that you actually need to see.
Oh, most deaf. And like I say, pretty much, like I say, all of that kind of goes hand in hand, especially, kind of like in the direction I feel like we're going as far as, a society like social media based. And, I kind of talked about that on the last episode. I pretty much just kind of honed in on like further elaborating how things have changed, even if you look at it from, a 10-year span or whatever, just kind of how we've gone so much to a social media base, and just kind of like having, these huge influencers. It used to be kind of like, okay, it's like a celebrity or, someone that holds like a big presence in the world, but it wasn't necessarily because of that social media presence. It was more so because of, I guess, kind of like what they did or what they were selling,
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
So like, I feel like, like us as individuals, we kind of need to hone in on that and also just kind of take advantage of like the different, social media platforms that exist, and also just kind of like different ways or different, things that we could do to further enhance our name, or kind of like, like even like, I guess, kind of with like doing your research and stuff like that. There's so many people out there and so many different sources, not saying that, what works for them will work for you, but it's important to, like I say, just kind of have that mindset, like, okay, I'm, going to do my research or whatever, this, that, and the other. And I know I have various, sources that I can rely on. So,
Yeah. And I definitely agree with that. Social media is one of the biggest platforms that we have right now. So there's absolutely no reason or no excuse for anybody that's aspiring to be somebody. There's absolutely no excuse for you, because the information that we have at our fingertips is crazy. As far as learning literally anything in the world, stocks, again, trucking, working out, every aspect of your life is literally at your fingertips. Now, social media is a great thing, but it can also be a negative thing. One thing, man, I tell you, at the beginning of this year, I actually experienced depression. And it was simply because I had been on social media a lot, comparing my life to other people. I'm in my last year of college. So, it's one of those things where I'm sure, as you remember, when you're approaching your last year of college, where it's like, you know what you want to do, but at the same time, you don't.
yeah.
You see other people making money, you see them being successful, and, you kind of in the same position. But, so I feel like, again, it's all about who you surround yourself around now. If you're following individuals and that are constantly being negative on a daily basis, then that can be detrimental to your everyday life. But now, if you're following people like him, 500, Mr. 2 Weeks Out, Neo Davis, David Never Sleeps, Organic Mindset Podcast, these particular pages are out there to help you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate everything you're doing, bro. Like this is crazy. And what's even more wild is that I remember when you first talked about doing this podcast, you actually gave me a call, and we had probably about like a two-hour call, and we just talking about housing and how you said that you wanted to, start the podcast up. But a lot of people are all talk, but they don't actually,
Yeah.
go with what they're actually doing. But I mean, you actually did this, bro.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like I say, and I feel like, that's the biggest, like a lot of times I feel like that's kind of like one of the big things that, holds a lot of people back. Like pretty much just kind of like either procrastination or, and I guess this kind of like falls into the procrastination class as well. But like, I'm real big on kind of like Millionaire Mindset podcast. And that was kind of like a big, it kind of gave me a big boost as I went back to like, the beginning stages of their podcast, and just kind of like listening to the point they came from, then compared to now. Like I say, years later, it's kind of like all about, delayed gratification, and pretty much just putting yourself in a position where, you can succeed. Like I say, nothing happens overnight. But
Yeah.
like on one of the recent episodes, I guess it was kind of like, how people always have like little snippets of kind of like how the episode, was I guess what the next episode entails, or, whatever. Mm-hmm. So for like one of the most recent episodes, it was pretty much like the title of it was, well, not even the title, but just kind of like, I guess the saying or the whatever it was kind of like, stop asking others for permission to go after your dreams. And I feel like a lot of times that's what people end up, they end up stopping themselves or kind of cutting themselves short, because they always want that gratification from the next person. Like, yeah, bro, I feel like you could do that. I feel like a lot of times, like anything, even, as far as school and stuff like that, people have different routes. People don't always see your vision. So I feel like, it's important that if you sit there and map it out, and, you have things like the way that you want to, is so important and so vital to just kind of like, pretty much come up with a game plan. And regardless of, what the next person says, just go after it. Cause you know what I'm saying? If you put your head down and kind of like grind it out, you never know, where you could be in the next few months, or, however. So.
Yeah. And man, and something that I was thinking about as you were talking is that oftentimes people think success is sexy. Nothing about success feels good to the people that are actually putting in the work day in and day out, staying up late at night, just trying to get to where they want to be. It actually takes determination, consistency, which we'll get into a little bit later in the podcast, because I want to share one of my personal experiences about how I'm able to, it's more on the investing side, but it took me a long way to get to where I'm at now. So we'll get to that later in the podcast, though.
Most def, yeah, most def. Yeah, most def. So kind of like to touch back on, because I feel like, that we kind of straight out definitely gave out some, major gems, the major inspiration, for whoever is listening. So, but to kind of get back, on what we were talking about as first is, if at first, as far as being involved, and stuff like that, do you like, how do you find, a balance, being in all these organizations and also, what I'm saying, completing your senior year in the midst of kind of determining, what you want to do after school and stuff like that. How do you make that happen?
Yeah. So one thing that I learned with being in some of my organizations is to properly prepare.
Yeah.
So most noobs out there, or any organization, they know proper preparation,
Yeah.
And that's something that actually stuck with me, not just from the time of, being on the yard, but actually in every aspect of life, simply because, if you don't properly prepare, it's not going to get done. And one of those things that you have to do in order to prepare is this is an old school way of doing or going about life, but it's something that you actually taught me, is to write things down.
Yes, sir.
And the Bible even talks about writing the vision and making it plain. So it's just something about actually writing it down. And as you write it down, your mind actually thinks about other things that you could do to make that specific event better, or your whole entire organization better, simply because you're writing it down.
Yeah.
Also, the Bible also talks about life and death is in the power of the tongue. So whenever you're speaking things, there's life in what you're actually saying. So in order to, have that balance, you have to actually not only write it down, but then you say out loud what you're actually going to do for that particular day, that particular week. So now I am actually a musician. So I don't read music, but I learn by ear. Yes. So whenever I hear things, it's like my mind can actually pick it up like right then. So whenever I write down a specific task for that particular day or week, and I say it out loud, now I remember it. And that's just something that comes with, being creative and, actually wanting to see the success that you want to see. Man, it literally takes hard work, even just to plan everything out. Sometimes I have a time conflict, and with being a president of two organizations, it's a lot to juggle, simply because you're taking on the burdens and the weight of all individuals. And one thing that I actually have taken from, being over organizations and being a part of organizations is that the power of delegation. And you and I had this conversation. We just had our homecoming.
Yeah.
This past weekend, October 23rd. So, and I was actually getting to a point where, like, man, this entire homecoming is not going to happen. It's not going to happen this year, man.
And I mean, like we talked about that, it's like sometimes, it can feel overwhelming, but I feel like, that's kind of almost like any other situation, you kind of look at it at the end of the day, like, trying to look ahead, like, okay, man, this date is coming up, blah, blah, blah. But the thing about that, and kind of like what I had used to kind of make, things like that just seem easier, I guess, any difficult task. At the end of the day, the time is not going to stop rolling just because, you have this difficult task coming up. So it's like, okay, if I have this difficult task coming up, the time I have now until then will truly dictate what, how the outcome of pretty much the situation. So if I choose to, be neglectful until then, of course, it'll be a disaster. But if it is a disaster, I pretty much have to lay in that bed. It'll be over soon. But if I choose to, prepare for it, then it'll be a success regardless of how hard, the situation is. And it'll just be that simple.
Man, and what's crazy, man? I was actually riding in my car about 2-3 days ago, and this is something that I do to help my speech, because I'm actually, like I stated earlier, extremely quiet person, but being put in certain positions to actually speak in front of large members, large individuals, groups of individuals, excuse me. I have to actually practice that, and it's hard for individuals that have been introverted all their life. But one thing that I was thinking about when I was in my truck, man, I was like, we oftentimes think about the future so much that we forget about the present. We have so much time on our hands that we can, just small things that can get done right now that will ultimately lead up to that massive thing in the future. So we just need to stay focused on what we have today and right now for the time being. My dad and I actually had a conversation about a month ago, and my dad is actually a pastor in Monroe, Louisiana. And so every Sunday we travel to Monroe, and we've been doing this about 17 years. So over half my life, and I'm 22 years old now. So over half my life, we've been going back and forth. And furthermore, he works in Alexandria as well. So needless to say, we are an extremely busy family. And so one thing that he and I had a conversation about, again, about a month ago, is that we just need to, enjoy the moment, for being the moment, enjoying the moment and not worrying about, oh, I have this meeting tomorrow, I have this event coming up at 6:00. Just enjoy wherever you are right now. Not saying being content and complacent, but, enjoy what God has blessed you with right now. And then, just delegate small things that you can do right now that could actually, further your career. Or if there's a particular book, I know you're deeply into books, read a page today. If you can't read a full chapter, read 2 pages, start small, and that eventually lead up to something great.
Yeah, no, most definitely. And it's crazy, like I say, that you say that with books, because I kind of like, took that in the stride as far as like a small part of, the bigger picture, as far as like just kind of like constantly, gaining knowledge or whatever. Because like one of my biggest things I kind of honed in with was with the podcast was I don't want to, just pretty much kind of be complacent with it, as far as, okay, I just, I'll just drop an episode this week. I'll just drop an episode this week. Every week, just like I expect, my guests to kind of come with, some knowledge or, something that could really help people. I also try to do the same. So whatever, like topics I try to, discuss or whatever, I want to be, fully knowledgeable on them as well. And I don't want to just come into it like, blindsided, because that's just like, if we're sitting there and we're talking about stocks or some of that nature, if I don't, of course, like I say, I am gaining knowledge from my guests, but I don't want to come into the situation like, okay, he didn't do his, he didn't do his homework. He pretty much just came into this, blind. So as far as like reading books and stuff like that, I feel like, it always kind of gave me an edge as far as having something to bring to the table. And I feel like, that's so important in so many situations or whatever, even as far as like relationships. And when I say relationships, I don't necessarily mean, just boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife. I mean, even just friendships. It's important to, like ensure that everybody is bringing something to the table, kind of just how we talked about, with some of the, social media, like the people we looked at on social media. I feel like the reason that, the group is successful as a whole is because, everyone has their thing or their niche that they, pretty much study and kind of hone in on. So they can all bring something to the bigger table, because even just, listen to music and things like that, of that nature, you'll catch like different little subliminals and stuff, like how you said about Jay-Z. So like I, listen to Fabulous and stuff like that. And he always kind of, like throw in little hints and stuff about that. Like pretty much, you can come sit at the table, but you have to bring your own chair. It's different little things, of that manner.
Yeah, that's definitely deep, bro.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Like I say, a lot of time it'll go over people's head or whatever, just because. But I'm like, man, we have so much motivation around us, as far as, like I say, social media. Of course, you have to filter that and take it how you how you feel like you should. Like if it's something beneficial and you're actually seeing, you know, the results from it, this, that, and other, you know, take that as a, you know, take that as heed, I guess. And kind of how you said, you know, with your dad or whatever, because I'm somewhat in the same situation. Of course, you know, ours isn't more so of a like commute or whatever, but like with my dad, you know, he kind of works a lot or whatever, like long hours and stuff like that, and still kind of does, you know, his, you know, stuff on the side. So my biggest thing with that is, you know, he's kind of always been like that. Like I say, legit my whole life and kind of like working long hours. So I'm like, you know, if my dad could do it, he's such and such years old, I know that I can do it. You know, I'm pretty sure, like I say, you had times where you look at it like that too. Like, okay, I feel like this task is hard, but I know my dad could, you know, drive to Monroe every week, drive to Ellick, you know, so it's, you know, it kind of like lightens the load a little bit, you know. And at the end of the day, like me and my parents, you know, we always kind of talk about this, is like pretty much almost looking at it, you know, from a, I guess like a generational standpoint. The goal is always to be better than, you know, before or whatever. And I feel like I said, I don't have kids, but, you know, like as a parent, like I say, just when my dad comes and talk to me, is always like, you know, the biggest thing is to be better than I am. Not saying I'm in a bad position or whatever, but if we continue to do this, at some point, you know, something is going to be, you know,
right.
The best. And like I say, you know, the situation is only getting better. Like I say, granted, you know, it's a lot of other factors in play as far as like laws and things of that nature. But I feel like, you know, as long as we have that mindset, like, you know, I'm going to do better than my parents did, blah, blah, blah. I feel like, you know, as a people, we could go a long way. And also just kind of like getting our like other people involved as far as like family. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes family can, you know, play a big part in like someone's downfall, but that's where, you know, you kind of have to be selective with your energy.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Actually, that's extremely good. And you know, I'm going back to a question that you asked me earlier. And there's just a few things that I thought about and I wrote down actually. Whenever you are leaving high school and trying to get into college, it is extremely important for every individual to do as much research as possible prior to your senior year. Yes. Simply because, you know, oftentimes we say, yeah, I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be a lawyer. You know, some of the things that are extremely popular to individuals just simply because it sounds good. Yeah. And that's the fact of the matter. You know,
they make a lot of money.
Yeah. I mean, but people fail to realize that college is extremely great. And I encourage it for everybody, just simply because all the social, emotional benefits that you can gather from it is extremely beneficial to individuals. However, it is extremely imperative that everybody prays before they, you know, make that big decision, because this is a decision that could, you know, possibly put you in a lot of debt. Preferably you have a great ACT that, you know, that will help you get the financial assistance that you will need in order to, you know, finish your college career. But you need to extremely pray, I mean, every night. And it's something that I wish I did before getting into college. I actually started off as a biology major. Then I went over to CIS. Then now I'm at accounting with a minor in CIS and a minor in business. But, you know, if I had done the proper preparation once again and prayed a lot about what I actually wanted to do and what my actual calling was, and not so much like try to please everyone by saying I'm going to be a physical therapist simply because it sounded good, you know. Keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. That's one of the things that I really regret. And if there's anybody that is listening to this podcast that could, you know, take something away from me as an individual, is that you need to pray first. After that, you need to be active, and you need to be active in high school. So if there's I was actually the president of a glee club in high school, and it was basically like a gospel organization that I created. You know, I partnered up with the principal of the school, Natchitoches Central, and another one of my buddies named Tyreek. He actually taught me a lot musically wise, and us three individuals, we got together and we had a choir of over 40 individuals, you know, and that's part of being a leader, having a vision, writing it down, saying it out loud, and then execution, also, that falls under the category of getting active. So that's my second point. First point is pray. Second, get active. And third, maybe this one should be second, but you should also have this in your list, which is to meet others. Oftentimes people say, I'm self-independent. I can do bad all by myself. All these popular sayings that people,
what they say.
They think that it's a good saying, but in actuality, without other people, you really can't get to where you need to go.
Some, whether it be networking, or just kind of whatever. That's 100% true.
Yeah, it's just the fact of the matter. You really can't reach the next level if you don't, put your face out there and actually take the initiative to meet other individuals to get to where you need to be. So those are my three things that I would strongly encourage everybody that's graduating from high school to pay attention to and write those things down, just so that you can be, it'll enhance your overall career readiness. So once you get to college, you're like, okay, man, I got this game plan. I'm gonna knock these classes out, and I'm gonna go ahead and graduate and get on with my life. So those three things will really help you out a lot.
Oh yeah, I completely agree. And like I said, I feel like, that's really a valid point. Like I say, of course, like I say, I've been, through the 4 years or whatever. And just from my personal experience, like I say, I was, blessed enough to be able to knock it out in 4 years and not really have, a hiccup. Like, don't get me wrong. I feel like, something always associated with the process of, college is kind of contemplating, because, you come around so many different individuals in different fields and stuff like that. And they always kind of tell you like, okay, well, I'm taking such and such class, this is easy, blah, blah, blah. And it is times where, like I say, in my opinion, it only gets harder in certain aspects. But like I said, if you take it, day by day, kind of how we talked about earlier, it's like at the end of the day, the light will begin to show and you will see the end of that tunnel. So it's like I just remember, kind of like looking back now, just as far as like my freshman year, even I would say freshman and sophomore year, I remember hating, to go on CASA and have to get up for these 8 o'clock classes, despite, having to get up way earlier than that for, high school. But it was kind of like at high school, I wouldn't even like, I feel like senioritis is really like a thing of the past. Like I had sophomore-itis, like sophomore year, I really didn't want to do anything, It was kind of like so imperative for me to just really lock in, because I didn't really have, a grasp of where I wanted to go. Like I felt like at a point, like I was really kind of like limiting myself. And then just as far as like looking at, I guess fees and stuff like that, I was like, okay, let me look at their tuition. Let me look at their tuition and kind of like, let me see what they have to offer. And like I said, of course, I have my degree in business administration with a minor in computer information system. So I felt like, it was kind of like a good major, because I couldn't go wrong with it, because at the end of the day, everything is swayed around business in some aspect. It might not be that specific field, but something is, swayed around it. And then as far as the computer information systems, I feel like that also kind of gave me a big edge, and kind of like how me and you talked about, you were kind of telling me like about, the accounting and stuff like that. I was like, the good thing about it is a lot of it ties together. So it's not like, you're putting a big workload on yourself. Now you might rearrange how your classes are offered, but at the end of the day, you're not really messing yourself over, because those three fields, tie together. So that was kind of like a big plus. And I just wanted to, kind of have that insight, I guess, as far as how to work, different like Microsoft systems. So that was, highly beneficial. Like I say, in my everyday job now, I use I use Word, I use Excel. So it kind of like definitely gave me an edge over certain people, because it was less I had to actually be taught. And I feel like when you really get out into the job force, that is things that pretty much are high quality, because I guess I feel like a lot of people's jobs, some of these major corporations or businesses, granted, they might have their own way of conducting business, but at the end of the day, the more you could bring to the table, the more high quality you could show them that you are, and the faster you could progress, because you already have some of these skills that this person may not have, and it's not a competition, but at the end of the day, you don't want to be stagnant in your career because this is your career you're talking about. This is something that it isn't like, high school or college where you could sit there and pretty much, okay, this year I could do this. A couple of mistakes at a job and you gone.
Yeah.
a couple of mistakes at the job and you gone. And, like I say, I put so much emphasis on a career because what I do at this job dictates what I do, at this next job or whatever. If I sit there and, I got fired from this job and I sit there and go try to apply for a CEO position, then of course you already know the outcome of that. But that's just kind of like, even you could put it in the college terms. If I sit there and I go to LC and, I pretty much kind of like screw off and I try to apply for Northwestern, I have to do additional things just because I chose to take this route. So it's kind of like the same way, from a career standpoint. And I kind of wanted to touch on one of the things that you had said is pretty much just as far as like expanding on, college and stuff like that. I feel like when you pretty much mentioned, kind of like some of the social and emotional benefits from going to college, I feel like that was, highly important because I feel like a lot of times people get so caught up in the moment, they tend to forget about those things. Like I said, and that was kind of like another thing I like, it's crazy. Like, every time I have a new guest on the next episode, we always kind of touch on something that I previously talked about, like within the last at least 2 episodes. So like, that was kind of one of the things I talked about just as far as like, coming back for homecoming and stuff like that. Yeah. And pretty much having the ability to network with people. I feel like a lot of times people miss out on that. And like I say, despite how close I was to Northwestern, as far as like staying at home, I still pretty much didn't know anybody when I went to school. It was kind of like a complete start over, like meeting new friends. But like I say, coming back from homecoming, not even just with the frat, just in general, people I've met, over my 4-year like journey is really mind blowing. Like I say, then to still see people in the real force, it's like you never know how that connection can take, how far that connection can take you down the line. So that's agreed. Yeah, that's definitely important. Like I say, that you captured that.
Man, also, you mentioned something about Microsoft. Yeah, I know we were probably going to, hold the investment talk.
Oh no, go ahead. Go ahead. Nah, go ahead.
But I want to give literally everything that I learned. Actually, my line brother Tyreek Andrews, he actually told me something, and it stuck with me. And
Shout out to
yes, sir, Tyreek. Man, he taught me something, and I will forever. Every day I wake up, I think about this, simply because it was that powerful. But he said, if I gain some knowledge and I didn't share it with somebody, I'm selfish. So and he man, every time we talked, he would always say that. And that like I said earlier, when I hear something, I'm able to remember it because I play music, and so that's kind of what I do for a living in a sense.
Yeah.
But man, he told me that, and so that's why I want to share everything that I know. And again, I appreciate you for even allowing me to come on your platform to share some of this information. But as far as investing wise, Microsoft is a great company to invest in. I actually read a article that stated that they will be taking over Apple within the next couple of weeks or months or so, simply because Apple, they had a stock market crash in a sense this past week, and it was due to them not being able to produce enough iPhone 13s for individuals. So Microsoft, I'm not quite sure when this is going to happen, but they actually are planning to take over Apple. So one thing that you learn as you study more about stocks is that there's something called buying the dip. And a lot of individuals, I'm pretty sure, Justin, you did this as well in regards to crypto.
Yeah.
Bitcoin in particular, people always try to find the lowest price that they could possibly find, just so that they can ride it back up, because Bitcoin is something that's going to most likely take over the entire currency of the world. Is most likely going to go to one currency. But that's neither here nor there. But Ethereum is another great cryptocurrency you should be looking into. just because of the overall, it's something called a blockchain, which is, it's basically a safety net to protect your money and your assets that you invest into this particular currency. Also, this is something that I encourage every single individual to do. And I've seen extreme returns on this on a consistent basis. So most individuals invest in the stock market. And whenever you invest in the stock market, you basically invest in a particular company. And so what you're actually doing is, let's just say that we've taken Apple, for example. So whenever we invest into Apple, for individuals that are kind of green on what investing actually is in the stock market, whenever you invest into Apple, you're banking on the fact that Apple is going to produce a great product this year, and they're going to get a lot of service and a lot of business and a lot of customers giving revenue to this particular company. So what Apple actually does within the stock market is, okay, we received a lot of revenue simply because you've invested in us to produce enough materials for individuals. Now we're going to give you a return on your investment by giving you a little bit in the way of your stock market revenue.
Yeah.
So that is something that takes extreme patience and time, simply because you have to actually watch that stuff every single day and almost every hour, just because news about different companies come out rapidly, and you can literally be up a couple thousand and next moment you're down to nothing. Actually, this is funny that we're talking about this, because there's a particular case in about 2001. It was called the Enron scandal. And so what this particular company was, it was a natural gas company. Okay. So this particular company found a way to make more money. And that was by making the entire organization public. And what that means is that they're actually putting this particular company on the stock market exchange, and people can publicly trade that particular stock and invest in it just so that they can get the returns, as we stated about in regards to Apple. Okay. But now this particular company, what they're actually doing is they were manipulating their stock prices by saying they use this particular accounting method called mark-to-market accounting. And that's, again, mark-to-market accounting. And basically what that says is, okay, let's just say that Justin, you and I, we make a deal, okay? And we're expecting our deal to make us $1 million. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, as Myles Nolly Incorporation, I'm going to go ahead and say I made $1 million just because of what we agreed on and what we expected it to be. Yeah. Now that's in a nutshell what mark-to-market accounting is. Now, this is not a safe practice, simply because I haven't received none of that $1 million yet, but I'm putting it on my books as though that I'm $1 million company. So what this particular Enron company did is they manipulated their stock prices, and they had a particular deal with Blockbuster, and they were expected to make $53 million. So what they did was, on the day of the deal, they used this accounting method and said, okay, we got $53 million. Okay. But this deal actually fell through because of the lack of technology during that time. Think about it, it's in 2000. There's no such thing as Apple products as the way we know it. And Windows was, at the very base model at that time. So the technology was not the biggest thing during that time. So actually they did this, and investors was like, man, this company has consistently been making profit year after year after year. So about 5 years straight, it went from about $20. That's how much a specific share was for the company. Then it went all the way up to $80 within a span of 5 years. So that means consistently every single year, people are making massive, massive returns. But you have to keep in mind that they were using this accounting method manipulating their investors, saying we worth more than what we actually have. But nobody really, informed the investors that they were using this particular accounting method. And so that went after about a year, in about 2001, this particular company, they had an auditing company. I forget which company is Anderson. They were one of the top 5 accounting corporations, auditing corporations in America, alongside with KPMG and so forth. But anyways, they gotten audited and so forth, and the company went from $80 a share to 50 cents a share. So they literally lost 29,000 employees. People had their 401ks tied up into this particular stock and this particular company, and everything went to shambles. Now, that is the risk that you run whenever you're investing into a stock. Now, what I do is I invest into the foreign exchange market. Okay, so basically, what foreign exchange, most people know it as Forex, and it's kind of gotten a bad rep simply because of the network marketing side of it, and trying to get people on your team to make revenue, so forth. But this is actually a real thing that's been happening for an extremely long time before the internet or anything else had been formed. But during Barack Obama's candidacy, he actually made it available for individuals to trade on Forex. So prior to Barack Obama, only big time corporations and hedge funds could actually invest into Forex. It wasn't open to the public. So again, Forex is short for the foreign exchange market. And what I'm actually doing is I'm not investing in a particular company. Rather, I'm investing in a particular currency. So you have something known as a pair. So I take, for example, AUD USD is a particular pair that I would invest in. Okay, so AUD standing for the Australian dollar, which is the currency in Australia, and the USD, as you know, that is the American currency, which is the US dollar. So basically what I'm doing is I'm investing in currencies and I'm using my technical analysis, basically what people that invest in stocks do as well, and determining whether the Australian dollar or the US dollar is weakening or getting stronger. So I'm no longer focusing on a particular company, which is on a microscopic level. Rather, I'm working on actual currency and countries. So that's the key difference between the stock market and the foreign exchange market. Now, both are extremely beneficial, but you take a bit more of a risk whenever you're investing in a particular company to do well. And as I stated before, you might you might be up thousands and you might be down the very next time that you look at your Robinhood or your Webull or whatever platform that you're using, or Coinbase, to check out your stock investments. So also, there's nothing that I do on a day-to-day basis to make money. Now, that may sound crazy to some people, but it's actually called automation. Okay, so now I have an AI robot, which is short for artificial intelligence robot, that actually places trades for me on a daily basis. And again, my line brother Tyreek said, if I knew some information I didn't share it, I'm selfish. So this is some information that's high tech. It's something that can, it can really further your career, and it's an extremely safe investment. You can actually see about 10 to 15% return on your investment on a monthly basis. Now, the higher your account balance is, the more that return on investment on a monthly basis actually is. Now, this particular artificial intelligence robot is called FX Scalper. Okay. And this is F as in Frank, X as in X-ray, Scalper, SCALP as in Paul, ER, X. Okay, so the full title is FX Scalper X. Now you can actually go on YouTube and searched this up and, fact checked everything that I'm saying. But I would strongly recommend anybody that has, a couple $100 here. If you have $200, invest in the robot, try it out, and then set up your MetaTrader 4 account, which is the platform that you'll be using to actually trade your currency. And just try it out. So that is something that's a gold mine that if I knew this coming into college, I probably, quite frankly, I probably wouldn't even finish just because of how valuable this particular information is. And now you and I, we talked about something earlier, and we talked about determination and, seeing stuff through and not giving up whenever you lose. Now, in particular, I lost so much money that I won't even say out of my mouth how much money I lost leading up to this information.
It'll be
but yeah, man, I don't even want to say it. But that's how much it was. But if I had given up when I started losing, I win some days, start losing. And I consistently made, some really, really massive profits. And then I lost everything. And when I tell you everything, I mean everything. But I was so determined because I had seen, like you talked about earlier, this bright tunnel at the end.
Yeah.
And this light at the end of the tunnel. I saw something that could really change the trajectory of my entire family. And so now I've gotten to a point where my little brother has an account, I have an account, and the rest of my family has an account. So this is something that we talked about earlier in the podcast, bringing something to the table. Now, my family has provided for me my entire life. Now, I had gotten to a point to where I was like, man, after I had been doing research and so forth, I said, man, I have to be able to give something back, and I have to have, some type of knowledge to be able to bring to the table, because I mean, I've been, pulling and taking 22 years of my life. How can I give something back? And that was my contribution. So I want somebody to take that information I just gave them and do it for your kids and your kids' kids and your entire family.
Yeah, that's major for real. Like I said, it's kind of all about, personal, I guess you would say like personal opinion. I guess that's the easy way of saying it. It's kind of like not necessarily thinking that you have to bring money to the table, because at the end of the day, people say this and that, but money can only do so much. A lot of times, like I say, it's about, the information that and the people that
Exactly.
So I feel like that's, highly important. And just kind of like, even on that subject, I had, learned so much. And I know me and you had, like I say, personally talked about just, pretty much everything you said, just kind of like in I guess you'll say a more compressed time limit. But like I say, we pretty much talked about all that, but I feel like you definitely hit like a lot of high points. And just to kind of, go back to social media, another page that I follow is Earn Your Leisure. And it's kind of like, it's like I say, heavily business oriented for real. Like, because I had seen, maybe I want to say it was maybe this week, I had seen a post, a video that they had did. And it kind of referenced the document from CNBC, and it was talking about Microsoft passing Apple to become the world's most valuable company. And it really kind of, like I say, just kind of surprised me, because I feel like a lot of times Microsoft is something that we overlook because we don't really realize how much is actually utilized as far as, even from a news aspect. But, of course, with Apple, like I say, that's something that we kind of look at because it's the items that we get from them, but not really looking at the back picture of it, like I say, because of course, I mean, if you look at me now, iPhone, MacBook, AirPods, Apple Watch, that's, 4 Apple products right there. So it's kind of like people see it from a materialistic aspect, but don't really see the back behind it, That was definitely something, to talk about. Then also kind of how you were talking about, with the stocks and stuff like that. The situation really sounded so similar to like Wolf of Wall Street. I don't know if that was something that you had seen, but
yeah.
Like it really took me forever to really just sit down and actually watch the movie, because I think like I had opportunity to watch it before, and I was like, man, I don't want to watch that movie. Like I say, you know, like I said, love the actors in it. But it was just like, man, I don't want to watch that movie. Like, man, I'm trying to see something blow up, you know.
Yeah.
But in reality, I did see something blow up. The company blew up right there in their face, you know, and it was just kind of like based off, you know, a true story, just talking about Tony Robbins. And, you know, just kind of like with his just transition as far as like, you know, with stocks and stuff like that, they would have the stocks, you know, pretty much saying that they were going for a certain price, and they would have people that would sit there and like skyrocket these stocks and get a lot of people to invest in them. And it really just kind of blew my mind. But like I say, at the end of the day, kind of how you say with the other stock, it kind of referred back to the time period that we were looking at. At that time, it wasn't like people could just go get on social media and be like, man, let me go do my research on this, that, and other. It was almost like word of mouth. And I feel like if a lot of things have so much of a presence or so much of a, you know, I guess a grasp of attention on others, and it's talked about so much, of course the next you know, will want it. So that was kind of one of the things I wanted to mention. And I don't know if you had kind of seen this, but how they had end up having like the Squid Games currency.
I didn't watch that, bro, but I've been seeing it like crazy.
So I didn't see Squid Games, the actual, you know, show, but I know they ended up doing like a Squid Game coin. And yes, it was crazy because the thing about it was pretty much the founders ended up reportedly running away with 2.5 million. So it was almost kind of like the same situation. And it was kind of like named as being one of the biggest scams, but it was just kind of like that situation. Like, you know, they were getting people to kind of like heavily invest in it. And then all of a sudden they just kind of like pulled out. Like I said, don't get me wrong. I'm like I say, you know, investing in, you know, different currencies and just things of that nature. And even just kind of like regular stocks as far as like, you know, index funds. So it's like, you know, you're investing in multiple things. So that way you still have, you know, your money kind of like coming back to you, getting those dividends. You have that money coming back to you, you know, for the quarter or whatever. So that's like a, you know, big benefit to me. And like I said, you could pretty much do your research, and it's a big, like long list of different companies that you can invest in as far as like from a dividend standpoint, and kind of how you said with the pretty much with just referring to, I guess, having a larger portfolio. You already know it's kind of like common sense. If you're talking about compounding interest and things of that nature, you have a bigger dividend return if you have more in your portfolio, because it's based off the quantity that you hold or the percentage that you hold. So that was, you know, another big thing. And the last thing I wanted to touch on as far as investing and kind of like the importance of it. So I had kept seeing another article floating around, and I had finally, like I say, finally was able to catch it on Earn Your Leisure and save it. And it was talking about in 2014 when Kobe Bryant had invested the $6 million in the startup of body armor. Like I say, and, you know, looking back then, like I said, that's, you know, 7 years ago. I think I just started seeing body armors, you know, maybe like in the last few years or whatever.
Right.
But it was like pretty much just kind of elaborating on how today Coke was in the process of purchasing the company for $5.6 billion. So that initial $6 million that Kobe Bryant had invested in 2014 pretty much makes that stake in the company worth $800 million now. So
wow. Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah. So like, just like I say, just the math on that, you know, it from 6 million to 800 million in 7 years. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a lot of people don't have 6 million laying around, so I'm not, you know, downplaying it like that's a little bit of money. But compared to the magnitude that it has grown to or can possibly grow to, if that deal does go through for 5.6 billion,
that's tough.
Yeah, and you know, like I like to kind of stay intact with, you know, different news like that, because it kind of like gives me, you know, awareness on different situations. Because I had seen this one like video, and I'm not even sure if it was true or anything like that, but it kind of just lets you know just kind of like the importance of taking advantage of a good opportunity when it's in your face. Like I said, a lot of times people are, you know, kind of like research. And it is a such thing, in my opinion, as over-researching when the situation is right there in your face. You can't tell, you know, certain people you can't negotiate with and tell them, well, give me 2 weeks and I'll, you know, get back. The deal, you know, is not going to sit on the table forever. It's like, you know, show me the money. If I'm, you know, business oriented or whatever. And like I said, that's not to say don't do your due diligence, but just like I had said earlier, you have, you know, pretty much set yourself a timer.
Yeah.
It's only two ways that it can go. Either you could, not do anything and let it just happen, and you already, know the result of it, or you could, put forth your full effort. And then when the time comes up, you could say, I did my best, blah, blah, blah. I might have a positive outcome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's, like I said, that's just kind of like my point of view on that. But I just feel like it's important, like I say, to hone in on your situations and pretty much just, like I say, do your research, because it's not on the table forever. But back to what I was saying at first, as far as what I had seen, not saying, like I say, if it was real or not, but it was like a reporter and she was interviewing like Bill Gates or something like that. And he pretty much had asked her, like, what was I want to say, like, maybe, how much was her worth, like something like how much was her worth or something like that. Not asking for a net worth, but just asking like how much was she worth, in a sense, or something like that. And pretty much he had kind of offered her a check, like wrote the check out right in front of her, offered a check, and she pretty much declined it. And he was like, he offered it again. And she pretty much declined it again. And he was like, see, you could have been the world's richest reporter, but instead, you declined my offer. So he's pretty much like, just taking advantage of the opportunities that present themselves. That's pretty much the message behind it.
Yeah. And just this my last thing that I would like to say about that. It just, again, like we talked about, social media is one of the greatest opportunities that one could ever do or partake in, because literally, as I stated earlier, man, it's no reason not to have the information. If anybody says that they are struggling with the business idea, Organic Mindset podcast is the greatest podcast out right now. And I encourage everybody to tune in simply because there's no other podcast that's better than this one.
Biggest manifestation ever.
Yes, sir. That's what we do, man.
I'm telling you, and that was kind of like I say, when you talked about that, that's all I'm thinking about, what I'm saying? Manifestation, that's what it's all about. Manifestation and putting forth that effort, for sure.
Yeah.
But man, to close out, I want to ask you one final question. Well, really it's two questions, but I want to close out on this note. So I want you to just give the people some of the books you're into, and also kind of like with you being a senior, as you stated earlier, what are your plans after school?
Got you. So, man, believe it or not, I'm not really a book type person, which I actually should change. I think that's one of my weak points. But I watch tons of podcasts that you wouldn't even believe how many podcasts I watch. Yeah. And every single day, every time I wake up, every morning, every time I go to bed, I have a podcast going on just because it gives me that motivation for the day or motivation at night, that I have it on my mind all day. One of the particular things that, again, Mr. Neil Davis, he teaches is that you should try to get as successful as you can, as fast as you can, just so that you can enjoy it as long as you can. Yes. So my whole motivation at this point in life is just to get as successful as I can, share the knowledge, everything that I learn, I want to share it to everybody. And just like you're doing on this podcast, I want to share it with everybody. So to answer your question, I don't really watch, I don't really read books, but some of the podcasts that I tune into is it's called Social Proof Podcast. Of course, the greatest podcast, Organic Mindset Podcast. And it's just a few others. I listen a lot to anybody that has something going on for themselves, and I determine that by the knowledge that they can give me or how they make me feel after I'm listening to them. So if they can inspire me, and it seems as though that they have more knowledge than me, then I'm getting it. So YouTube. To answer your second question, my plans after college. So, man, it's one of those things that I'm still praying about. I have been taking a look at a particular certification that's called a Scrum Master. And this particular certification allows you to have something called Agile methodology. And it's basically something that, since you were the president of Cap Outside, when you were on the yard, you understand what it's like to lead a group of individuals. So the Scrum Master's role is basically to keep everybody on track, just to meet specific deadlines, helping them out, being that middleman, giving out delegations and so forth. Most of the things that you've taught me when you were on the yard, I tried to stick as close by you as I could, just so that I can learn as much as I could, since it's a known fact that whenever you surround yourself or try to get around somebody that's has had the experience, you should take full advantage of it, because you just rather take their fall downs and when they scrape their knee, you'd rather not scrape yours, so that you can just get that information and just run with it,
Yeah.
So, but that's my plans after college. I plan to still play music and share God's word as much as I can.
Yeah, that's dope, bro. That's dope for real. Like I said, I never even heard of that certification before. And I feel like, a lot of times, like I say, people kind of lose sight of those certifications. But I feel like, that'll just kind of make you stand out that much more, whatever, direction you do choose to go. Yeah, that's definitely dope.
Yeah, appreciate that, man.
Yeah, most definitely. You got anything else you want to, get a people though before we get off of here?
One last thing that I can say is just, get as much research as you can, and keep God first, and be humble. The only time that you should look down on anyone is to help pick them up, and that's something that I've learned throughout my years in college. It's just, there's individuals that go through so much on a day-to-day basis, and especially, individuals transferring from that high school to college life experience. It's going to be extremely tough because you don't have a teacher that's really just holding your hand, or individuals that have graduated college and they're moving on to the real workforce experience, and people that have children. It's a never-ending cycle where you just consistently going through new things in your life that you hadn't experienced. So in order to stay level-headed is to never look down on anyone, simply because you never know when you might need them. And pray as much as you can, and stay focused and stay hungry.
Great words. And like always, man, I appreciate you for coming on, dropping knowledge, and just, really just kind of, like I say, conversing with me. I feel like, this episode was packed with various items that, different individuals could take, from all different ages, because like I say, it's never too late at the end of the day. So yeah. I appreciate you for sure.
Yes, sir, man. Hey, I appreciate you, bro. You're a big mentor in my life, and I commend everything that you're doing. So don't ever give up, bro. And just when you think somebody's not watching, bro, you just never know when you're going to meet that person that's going to take you under their wing and make this thing go to the top.
Yes, sir. So without further ado, man, we out for this episode. Peace.